I do have to say that several days ago, when we finally managed to work out some quarter of an hour to get here, I went the usual way. And I started thinking of some nice, joke, anecdote, the way they always teach us to start all these speeches. And I couldn't find any. And I guess I realized that it's not the question of not finding an anecdote about the human rights or anything dealing with this issue. I think that unfortunately my conclusion was that what is happening with the whole issue of human rights of late is a joke in itself. And I'm saying that with a lot of pain. As someone who once, as Anne mentioned, was defined as prisoner of conscience and was dependent very much on international bodies and human rights organizations around the world. I think that if we are talking about what is happening with human rights, we can give even very practical examples of what is happening. From its inception in June 2006 until today, out of total of 25 census, the United Nations Human Rights Council had condemned Myanmar in 4 resolutions, and North Korea once, and Israel in 20 resolutions. While the Council addressed Sudan several times and Congo once, it failed to pass any condemnatory resolutions against the Khartoum or Kinshasa governments, but only weak and ineffective declarations, some of which actually praised Sudan for its cooperation. On the other hand, out of a total of 9 special sessions, 5 had been on Israel. Israel is singled out and held to a higher standard than the rest of the world. By the way, this sentence is sometimes something that we hear a lot in Israel. When we would try to make the comparison with something in the area, there would be immediately the response, well, you guys don't presume that we would judge you like any of these neighboring countries. And at some stage, I feel very ill at ease about this sentence, because it's basically such a terrible diminishing of certain peoples and countries. Can't they live according to the democratic standards? Can't they be held responsible according to the international norms? What is it like? Can you really believe that we will thoroughly check what is happening there? It's obvious that they are different. No one should be different. The standards should be the same all around the world. I think that if we want to really raise the standards and not play them down, this should be our goal. And in terms of the attitude towards these issues, I mentioned a number of resolutions of different UN bodies, but it's not just about the UN. I want to show you something. You know what it is? This is from the last report of Amnesty International. It is, I wouldn't say 10, though it's 10 pages. It's 9 full pages. 9 full pages. You know what it is? This is the report of Amnesty International. That's how it looks on dozens of countries. I don't want to name them all, because then I'll be accused of, once again, blaming different countries. But normally it says here, there is no Amnesty International presence in this country, because I guess it's a little bit difficult to collect information in countries where there are real problems with human rights. I'll share with you, we spoke about UN, we spoke about international human rights organizations. I'll share with you what is happening in the press, in the media. A couple of weeks ago in Israel, I was sharing a stage with a very prominent journalist. The audience, by the way, were all journalists themselves, not stationed in Israel, coming for a visit from different European countries. My counterpart, that very prominent journalist, said, sometimes we are being accused of spending too much time on Israel and too little time on other countries in this area. So I want to tell you why. and I'm more or less quoting, I could try to get a visa to Syria. It will take me half a year to get this visa. I'll get a visa for 10 days. I'll get there, I'll spend 9 days in my hotel room. On the 10th day, I'll get a meeting with Deputy Minister of Agriculture, in his words. We'll drink tea, and then they'll take me back to the airport. You know what? I also smiled and laughed. There's nothing to laugh about. If we will continue to look for the coin under the streetlight, as they say, if we will continue to look for human rights violations in democratic countries because it's so easy, and we is a very collective, we, including us, I think that we won't get anywhere. And when people ask me what is so terrible about this whole Durban process, except for that whole hate fest that they had, okay, the rest is fine. It's your Israeli problem. It's dying out anyway. What do you care so much? I think I care here in the name of human rights, because we all have only so and so much time and so much effort invested in it. And if the whole effort will be invested in, I don't have a better expression, in looking for the coin under the streetlight, then other issues, real issues, won't be attended. And this is exactly what has been happening in the last 10 years. With all the violations, with everything, even going right now as we speak in our area. I mentioned Syria. I'm not on this side or that side there. I'm just thinking about at least dozens of people being killed every day. And no one's really trying to attend to that and see what could possibly be done, because everyone is busy with Israelis building a house somewhere. I think that this is really something that I want to praise you for trying to address during this meeting, because once again, if we don't manage to move our efforts in the proper direction, I think that we will be even strengthening the present situation. And just think about those who are behind it. For those who were, and probably there are people in this room who were witnessing the first Durban 10 years ago. It was not spontaneous. It was not just, you know, something that all of a sudden happened. It was very well organized and funded, this hijacking. And yes, the same people used to hijack planes and then kidnap journalists, and now successfully hijacked the human rights agenda. That's exactly what happened here. And I think that, once again, if we are thinking of how to change that, we had good examples. And once again, I'll repeat, I'm a personal examples of how good examples work. There was a great American here in this country who once said, "The world looks to the United States as a mighty source of hope to those who languish under tyranny. This is a weighty responsibility that no American, especially a president, can take lightly. In my upcoming meetings, I know that sitting next to me will be unseen guests, men and women whose only hope is that they are not forgotten here in the West. These people are not now, nor will they ever be, forgotten by our administration. We see the violation of anyone's human rights, acts of repression or brutality, as attacks on civilization itself." I had a real pleasure to meet this gentleman exactly 2 weeks before he said those words. And I had the pleasure of meeting him because he had made, him and his administration, a lot of efforts on behalf of myself and many others so that we would be able to meet him and our brothers in Israel. His name was Ronald Reagan, and he delivered a speech to 185 human rights activists on December 2, 1987. And I think that if we will be able to concentrate on human rights exactly according to the Charter of the United Nations, being no less important than all the other things mentioned in that Charter, we will be able to fight the hijackers, to bring the agenda back to the place where it should be, and to really attend the human rights issues in many countries all around the world. Thank you.